She said it with fire in her eyes and grease on her apron. "I ain't my mother, but I can cook just as good." That was how Clara June introduced herself to new Penance. Not with a handshake or a smile, but with a declaration sharp enough to slice silence. She stood in the doorway of the Lone Trail Saloon, 19, sunburnt, and done waiting for permission to live her own life. She had nothing but a flour sack in one hand and fire in the other. The saloon wasn't hiring. Truth be told, it wasn't hiring anyone, but Clara didn't ask. She marched across cracked floorboards, straight to the bar, where a man stood with arms folded and a stare like a dust storm. Cole Merritt. He didn't flinch, just studied her. "I can cook. Better than my mother ever did. You give me one shot, one meal. If you don't like it, I walk." A chuckle rumbled through the saloon. Low, dismissive. One man coughed something that might have been a laugh. Another muttered, "Girl doesn't know what she's walking into." Clara didn't flinch either. Cole looked her over. The worn boots, the patched skirt, the defiance in her jaw. He didn't smile, hadn't, since the war ended, and even then it looked more like pain than peace, but something flickered behind his eyes. He reached under the bar and tossed her a sack of beans. "Stove's out back." She didn't thank him, just nodded and disappeared through the swinging kitchen door. That should have been the end of it. One stubborn girl, one sack of beans, and one broken stove. But Clara cooked like she was putting herself back together. The wood was damp, the lard was bad, but she stirred like her life depended on it, because it did. By sundown, the scent of peppered beans and cornbread drifted into the saloon thick as a spell. Conversation stilled. Drunks paused mid-drink. Laughter died on open lips. Cole was the thun yet to try it. He didn't say a word. He just looked at her through the rising steam. Then he set the plate down and said, "Come back tomorrow." And she did. If you've ever stood at the edge of nothing with nothing but your hands and hope, then you'll know why that sentence meant more than a job. It was the start of something, a spark, a promise. And for Clara June, it was the thunyat meal she ever served that didn't taste like running. If you've ever had to start over with nothing but a busted stove and a little fire in your gut, stay with this story, because the next part will show you how a small flame can feed a life bigger than fear. The door creaked open again, not loud but deliberate, and the room shifted, not from noise, but from presence. Clara froze. Ellis Rook walked in like he owned the floor beneath his boots. Velvet coat, silver bit on his reins, and 3 men flanking him, one broad, one scarred, one twitchy, all armed. He didn't need to say anything. His smile did the talking. Slow, crooked, dangerous. "Well, I'll be," he said, eyes locking on Clara through the kitchen window behind the bar. Didn't expect to see a little Miller girl this far from the holler. Her blood turned cold. Her hands stopped moving, and something in her went still, like a field before fire. Cole noticed. He always did. "You know him?" he asked, voice low. She nodded once. "He knew my mother." That was all she said. Ellis walked in like a man returning home, like he'd built the place himself. He tipped his hat, looked around, and landed his eyes on Clara again. "I didn't come for supper," he said, with that same slick grin. Clara stepped out, apron still on, ladle still in hand. "Then leave. You forget whose blood you carry?" he asked, voice suddenly harder. "You think some beans and cornbread make you new?" Cole moved then. Not fast, not loud, just enough to remind Ellis this wasn't his ground. "She works here," Cole said, "and you're done talking." Ellis stared at him, smile gone, cold now. "You threatening me, Merritt?" Cole didn't answer. He didn't need to. Ellis turned with a hiss in his throat. "Some debts don't wash out with grease and grit." He left with the slam of a door, but something stayed behind, like smoke that wouldn't clear. That night, Clara sat on the back steps, scrubbed raw from dishwater and silent. "My mother worked for him, cooking, cleaning, sometimes worse. When she died, he said I owed him what she didn't pay. So I ran." Cole didn't interrupt, just listened. "I don't want to run anymore." He nodded. "Then don't." But fire doesn't wait for fear to settle. A week later, a package arrived, burlap wrapped. Inside, her old apron, scorched. A broken ladle. No note. Just a message written in ash. That night, she asked Cole to teach her how to shoot. "You sure? I can't keep stirring stew while the past sets fire to the porch." He taught her slow, patient, deliberate, like rebuilding a broken table. She was shaky, but she didn't flinch. By the thu-high lesson, she hit the fence post. By the thu-num, the lantern. That's when he stopped calling her Clara. He started calling her June, not Miller, not girl. June. Like something new, something remade in heat. But even names can't protect you from fire. And one night, fire came back. The saloon burned. Fast, hot, Judgment Day flames. They fought it together. She grabbed the ledger. He grabbed the rifle. They barely made it out. The town watched it smoke, and Clara stood in the ash with soot on her cheeks and said, "We rebuild." Cole didn't say no. Sometimes, the only way out isn't escape. It's becoming someone who doesn't have to. By morning, Clara was already sweeping ash from the floor before the rooster crowed. Her hair was still singed, her boots were scorched, but her hands didn't shake. Not anymore. Cole found her hunched over a basin, scrubbing soot from a skillet like it owed her something. He dropped a sack of flour and a tin of salt onto the counter. "Got these from Hank. He said they're paid for." "I didn't pay him," she replied without looking up. "I know. I did. You don't have to do everything yourself, June." "I do," she said quietly, wiping her brow. "Because it's mine now, too." That silenced him, not because he disagreed, but because he understood. Survival had always meant solitude, but Clara had changed that, not by asking, but by insisting on staying. And the town noticed. They came, slow but steady. Widow Bellamy brought plates. The preacher offered a hymnal stand for shelving. Kids ran water from the well. Hank hammered planks without charging a dime. Even Sheriff Epps stood on the street corner, leaning on his cane, muttering, "Doesn't look like an accident to me." Cole said nothing, but he saw the way Epps watched Clara, the way some folks looked at her like fire might still be hiding under her nails. That night, Cole found Clara behind the saloon, practicing her draw with a carved stick shaped like a pistol. "You're holding it too tight," he said. She spun, breath-catching, but relaxed when she saw him. "When I loosen it, it slips, because you're trying to force control. Let it balance instead." He stepped forward, guiding her hand with his. His were rough, hers were raw. The distance between them was filled with something unsaid. When she tried again, the motion was cleaner. Not perfect, but better. "He won't stop," she said, eyes scanning the stars. Number, but he already tried, and failed. She turned to him. "Why are you helping me?" Gola hesitated. "Because I know what it's like to fight a man with more money than soul, and because you remind me of someone I once knew." "Who?" "My sister." Clara didn't press. She just nodded. "Then let's make sure no one else starves while we've got hands to cook." They rebuilt the kitchen thunyat. Cole handled the framing. Clara hung the pans. When the new stove arrived, courtesy of the mayor's wife, they stood together in silence before lighting it. The thunyat thing she made was cornbread, burnt at the edges, soft in the middle. Not perfect, but it smelled like a beginning. By the end of the week, the saloon had 4 tables, 2 barrels of whiskey, and whatever Cole could scrape up for chairs. And people came, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Clara cooked. Mina cleaned. The girl had shown up with dirt on her face, and 1 boot missing, but she learned fast, spoke little, watched everything. Clara taught her how to season stew by smell, how to test heat with her palm, how to know when bread was done just by the way it sounded when tapped. Mina never asked to stay. Clara never told her to leave. Then one night, the girl spoke. "He's coming." Clara stilled. "Who?" "Ellis. He's mad you didn't come back. Said he's going to burn every place you touch." Clara didn't speak. She just turned and looked toward the ridge, where the sky had begun to darken. The next morning, a strip of red cloth was nailed to the saloon door. A knife pinned it in place. "She belongs to the ashes." Cole ripped it down. Clara burned it in the stove. But the town had seen, and fear, once sparked, spreads faster than fire. It began again with silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that sinks into your bones and tells you something's wrong before you see it. The preacher's barn burned thunyut. Nothing inside but feed and hope. Then Hank's windows shattered in the middle of the night, glass scattered across the porch like broken promises, and then Mrs. Jeff, 60 and lame in one leg, went missing. They found her 2 days later near the creek, dazed and rope-bruised, unable to speak a word. Sheriff Epps stood in the ashes, jaw clenched, muttering curses, too tired to carry weight. Clara watched from the saloon steps, apron untied, hands still from more than just fear. The flames had come again, but this time, it wasn't her house. It was theirs. By dusk, the town had turned quiet in the worst way. Doors closed early. Curtains stayed drawn. A few shopkeepers stopped looking her in the eye. Some whispered. One said it loud enough for her to hear. She brought this here. That night, Clara walked up the ridge, boots scraping rock, wind tugging at her skirt. She stopped at the top, stared down at the town below, and said the thing she hadn't said aloud in weeks. I should leave. Low. Cole didn't flinch. He stood beside her, silent. If I go, maybe they'll be safe, she whispered. He didn't answer right away. Just watched the wind move through the trees like it was listening. If you go, he finally said, I go too. She looked at him, tired to her bones. They didn't ask for this. Neither did you. And if staying means more fires, more missing folk, then we burn together, or we fight. The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. The next morning, Clara called a meeting. Not in the church, not in the mayor's house, in the saloon. People came slow, reluctant, faces guarded. Clara stood behind the bar, eyes steady, voice clear. I didn't bring this war, she said, but I stopped pretending I didn't already live inside it. No one spoke. I can leave, she continued. If that's what you want, I'll walk out today, and maybe he'll follow. Or maybe he'll stay and burn every one of you down because you didn't stop me. Left. Still, no one moved. But if we stay together, we stand a chance. Not a promise, just a chance. A long breath passed through the room. Then Hank stepped forward, hands clenched. So what do we do? Cole spoke then, stepping up beside her. We stand. Widow Bellamy came next. We've rebuilt before. We'll do it again. A few nodded, then more. Not all, not most, but enough. That night, Clara cooked stew. She fed every hand that lifted a beam, hammered a nail, or simply stood beside her. Not because they were hungry, but because food meant something. A meal around a table meant something. It said, we're still here. The fire had come again, but this time, it hadn't left her alone in the ashes. No one slept easy after that meeting. The town moved like a body that knew it had been wounded but refused to bleed. Men dug trenches around the schoolhouse. Women melted scrap metal into bullets. The children ran water buckets in shifts from the well. Cole reinforced every door in the saloon with iron brackets. Sheriff Epps mapped rotations for night watch, though his cane dragged deeper with every round. Mina spent her evenings in the back room, learning how to load a rifle with hands that still trembled but never hesitated. And Clara cooked, not for flavor, for survival. Hardtack, jerky, beans salted enough to last through siege or storm. But the worst part was not the work, it was the waiting. Ellis didn't come, not the next day, not the next week. And the longer the silence stretched, the tighter it coiled. Then came the still night. No wind, no dogs barking. The kind of quiet that presses against your ribs and tells you the storm has already arrived. You just haven't seen it yet. Clara sat at the saloon window, apron folded beside her, eyes fixed on the dark street. Cole was at the table, cleaning his pistol slow and steady. Mina slept near the stove, the rifle curled in her arms like a blanket. Then, at just past 2 bells, the glass shattered. A bottle came through the front window, trailing flame. It hit the bar and exploded in a burst of fire and liquor. Wood cracked. Smoke surged. Clara screamed for Mina. Cole was already moving, blanket in hand, stomping out the fire with quick, brutal strikes. Another bottle hit the porch. Then, another. Outside, laughter, hoofbeats, shouts. Back door, Cole yelled. But it was too late. Ellis's men came from both ends of the street, rifles in hand, torches raised. One burst through the rear entrance. Clara swung the kettle hard, catching him across the face. He went down with a groan. Another grabbed her from behind. She twisted, elbowed, bit his wrist. He shouted and let go. Cole fired twice. One scream cut the night. Then two more came in. He shot again, missed, reloaded. Smoke filled the kitchen. The fire was spreading, hungry and fast. "Mina," Clara coughed. "Trap door. Go." The girl scrambled beneath the counter, lifting the hatch and dropping down. Clara shoved it shut just as another bottle smashed against the stove. Sparks leapt into the rafters. "We can't hold this," she gasped. "Then we don't," Cole answered. He grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the cellar door behind the pantry. They dropped into darkness just as boots thundered above. They held their breath while the world burned inches away. When they climbed out hours later, the saloon was a skeleton. Black beams, smoldering floorboards. One wall still standing like a gravestone. Clara dropped to her knees. Mina crawled out from the trapdoor, coughing, streaked with ash, but alive. She ran to Clara, arms wrapping tight. They had survived, but survival was no longer enough. The letter was folded once. Thick paper, no seal. Just her name, written in steady, practiced ink. Inside, 5 words. "He's not going to hang." No explanation, no name. Just truth laid bare. Clara read it 3 times before the fire took it. The flames swallowed the page, but not the weight it carried. Mina found her on the porch, hands still, eyes far. What did it say? Clara didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was calm. "He's free." Mina's jaw tightened. "That's not fair." "No," Clara said. "It isn't." "Can we stop him?" "Yes, but not from here." "No." That night, Cole knocked once and sat beside her, his shirt smelling of smoke and iron. "You want me to go after him?" he asked. "No. I'm going." He nodded. "Then I'm going too." Before dawn, they saddled the horses. No goodbyes, no notes. Just a straight line in the dirt and 2 riders headed south. The desert stretched wide and empty, heat rising in waves that blurred the horizon. The sky didn't blink. The road didn't curve. Clara rode in silence, jaw locked, eyes forward. Cole trailed just behind, rifle across his back, eyes on the ridges. 3 days passed. Then 4. On the Thu-Num, Pine Brook rose from the dust like something half-buried and still dangerous. 1 saloon, 1 jail. Everything else looked like it leaned too far and never stood back up. But the saloon was new, built with money, painted red, roof clean. Ellis was here. They dismounted just outside town. No hesitation, no talk. Clara stepped through the swinging doors, Thunyat. The saloon was crowded, too quiet. Smoke hung low. Piano keys stumbled, then stopped. And at the back, seated like a king in a carved chair, was Ellis Crowley. His coat was dark blue now, his boots polished, his eyes the same. He looked up, saw her. "Well," he said, smiling wide. "The cook walks in." Clara didn't blink. "I thought you'd be smarter," he continued, standing slow. "I thought you'd stay in your little town, play house, make soup. I'm not here to talk." "Load?" "No." "Then why come all this way?" "To tell you it's over." Ellis chuckled. "You rode 3 days to lose?" Clara took 1 step closer. "You lost already." His eyes narrowed, his voice dropped. "You think walking into my place makes you strong? Number, I think standing when every bone tells me to run makes me strong." He moved then, fast, but she was faster. The knife slammed into the bar, right beside his hand. Not deep, not enough to kill, just enough to stop him. "Don't," she said. Ellis looked around. The room had gone still. Then Cole entered, rifle low, steady. She said, "Don't," he added. Ellis backed up a step, but he smiled. "You're going to kill me?" "No," Clara said. "Not yet." The sheriff of Pine Brook, summoned by the noise, arrived moments later. He saw the knife, the standoff, the faces watching. "I never liked you," he muttered to Ellis. "You've got warrants. Time to go." Ellis was cuffed. No speeches. No final word. As he was let out, Clara spoke one last time. "You're not walking into my town again. You're leaving through bars or not at all." Ellis didn't smile this time. Clara turned, walked out into the sunlight. For the thunyat time in her life, she wasn't running. She was chasing. And she'd caught what tried to burn her. They rode home in silence. Clara, Cole, and Mina followed the trail back to New Penance, with dust on their boots and something new in their chests. Not pride, not victory, just breath. Easy breath. The kind that didn't carry the weight of fear anymore. Ellis Crowley had been taken by law this time, not by flame or fury, but by consequence. Witnesses, warrants, real charges from towns he thought forgotten. He had been dragged out of Pinebrook not as a legend, but as a man who finally ran out of places to hide. New Penance looked smaller from the ridge, but brighter. Children ran through the streets again. Smoke curled from rebuilt chimneys. The saloon doors were painted blue, a soft kind of defiance. Mina saw them thunyat. She dropped her apron, bolted across the street, and wrapped her arms around Clara before either of them could speak. She hugged Cole next, quick and fierce, then stepped back, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her dress. "I made tarts," she said, "burned the crust." Clara laughed, the sound light for the thunyat time in years. "Perfect. Lined." They sat on the porch that evening, coffee in hand, crooked crusts on chipped plates, watching the town move like it had always meant to survive. Clara didn't speak much. She didn't need to. Cole built a cabin west of town, quiet and sturdy. Mina opened her bakery just beside the schoolhouse. Kids passed by her window each morning, pressing noses to the glass when the smell of warm bread drifted through. People married. Gardens grew. Someone planted trees in the square, and Clara cooked. Every Sunday, she opened the kitchen and fed whoever needed feeding. Not just townsfolk, strangers, travelers, the lonely and the tired. She made peach cobbler now, just because she could. She didn't serve fear anymore. She served warmth. One morning, Widow Bellamy sat at a corner table with a bowl of Clara's stew in front of her. She lifted her spoon, took one bite, and said softly, "Tastes just like your mother's." Clara smiled. "I ain't her," she said, "but I can cook just as good." Though no one disagreed. That night, as the town drifted into sleep and the stars blinked soft above, Clara stood alone outside the kitchen. She looked up at the sky, then down at her hands. They were still rough, still scarred, but steady. Cole stepped beside her. "You all right?" he asked. "I am," she said. "For once I really am." The wind moved through the trees like it was listening. Nothing burned, nothing chased. She had not won a war, but she had outlived it. If you ever believed one person can't change a town, remember Clara June. She didn't come with an army. She came with a skillet, a spine of iron, and a will to stay. If this story stayed with you, if it reminded you that fire doesn't always destroy it, sometimes forges something stronger than, share it. Because somewhere out there, another Clara is still lighting her thunyat stove. And she's not her mother, but she can cook just as good.